Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Mindy Eggen, and in today's video I am showing you more ways that you can use the Autumn Wishes and Wishing You Joy stamp and stencil collection from Gina K Designs and Thermoweb. This is actually part of an Instagram hop that we're having, so if you're watching this currently, I'll have a link down below to my Instagram account so you can take a look and participate. Here is a look at the Autumn Wishes stamp set. I had previously done a video using the trees. This time I'm going to be using the leaves to make a couple fall cards. So I laid out those leaves in a Misty stamping tool. I'm going to stamp these numerous times in various colors. I'm actually starting off by stamping in jellybean green ink. I do show fresh asparagus, but I did not use it in today's project. So starting out, just inking up those leaves. Mine are very well conditioned, so they make a really great first impression. Once I have those stamped, I'm going to ink up the edges to really give these leaves a fall look. I'm using chocolate truffle ink with a little sponge dauber. Now in some of my pictures, the leaves probably don't look like they have any chocolate truffle on the edges. This is actually my second card creating with these leaves. So in one card, I just used various colors. For instance, I had used the fresh asparagus in one of my cards. This time, I really wanted to give these a fall feel, and that's why I went with the darker edges using that chocolate truffle. I shifted my cardstock down, and then I'm stamping these in prickly pear ink, which I think is a really pretty fall color. And then once again, inking up those edges with that dark color. You could also go through some of your inks and see if you have just a darker brown or a different. You could even do yellow or red to ink up those edges. Anything to really give those that fall feel. Then I'll rotate my cardstock in my Misty tool, and I'm going to stamp one more set in tomato soup. I will also be inking up these edges with that mini sponge dauber, and I'm just doing the very outer edges. You could do as little or as much as you want. It's one of the reasons I love living in Wisconsin is we get such a variety of colors on our trees. It is just one of the most beautiful times of the year in my opinion. Now, the beauty of using a Misty stamping tool is you can stamp these twice if you really wanted to deepen those edges a little bit more. Once I finish stamping those, I'm going to line up the coordinating dies and die cut these out. I'm holding that in place with some purple tape, which is a really nice low tack tape and won't ruin my paper when I remove it. After I run these through my die cut machine and have them all die cut out, I'm showing you here now, they do have a coordinating stencil, so you could use this to line it up and add the details to the leaves with some of the glitz glitter gel. There are some new colors that are out, pumpkin spice and holiday pine. There's also more variety. You could use the gold glitz glitter gel, anything you'd like. I decided to just stamp these out, and I'm using a comfort block to do this. I found that just a lot easier and quicker. And it's also one of the reasons I die cut and then went in and stamped. It was easier for me to line up the base of that stem, and especially using the clear block, I can see through, line up where that stem is going to be, and just stamp all of these in that chocolate truffle ink. Now that I have those all stamped out, I'm going to start assembling my card, which is a really simple design, but I loved the look of all the leaves on there. I'm going to attach all of those leaves onto a piece of white cardstock, and this is measuring 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to line up those leaves above my sentiment. I did stamp that sentiment off screen. The Autumn Wishes is stamped in the chocolate truffle ink on a piece of white cardstock that I just trimmed down to a thin strip. And I'm going to have some leaves coming out from above and then underneath. Once I have that lined up where I want, I'm just going to take some tape runner and add those leaves underneath. The sentiment is going to cover up that base, so it's going to clean that look up a little bit. To add the sentiment, I'm attaching foam tape to the back of that just to give it a little bit of lift. And I did go ahead and attach my white panel to a piece of chocolate truffle cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And that will finish up our first card. Very clean and simple, just that little bit of lift to give it some dimension. Now my next card is using up some more of those leaves that I had stamped out. Another very clean and simple design where I'm just aligning these in a square format on my card panel. So once I have aligned where I want the leaves to go, I'm going to stamp a sentiment just in one of those spaces, and that's also using the chocolate truffle ink. So using the Misty tool, I'm just going to ink up that stamp set. And I'm going to add this panel to a A2 size card base, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that was made out of the honey mustard cardstock, which is such a great fall color. To add the leaves to the front, I'm going to use some foam tape to pop those up just a little bit. And a lot of times I hear people say they're not sure what they would do with autumn cards, like the autumn wishes. I think they make great thinking of you or hello cards, or just to share with someone to brighten their day. My next card is going to be featuring the Wishing You Joy collection. So it has a large 6x8 stamp set, coordinating dies, and stencil. I'm going to be focusing on the flowers, but I just wanted to show you here the ornament and the different ways that you can layer up that stencil. There's different designs that you can add to it. There's some swirls and some dots. There's some snowflakes on this stencil, so many options. And I will link in the corner to a video I had created using those ornaments. But today we'll focus on the flowers. I am going to be using my Misty stamping tool to stamp out a bunch of flowers, and I'm using the Raging Red Electro-Pop ink. I thought this was such a really great bright red, and you can see my stamp is discolored a little bit because it has been used a lot lately, but the discoloring doesn't hurt the stamping at all. So just shifting my cardstock in my Misty tool, I'm going to stamp out a bunch of these flowers. And if you do happen to get ink somewhere around that cardstock, it's not a big deal because we're going to be die cutting these out anyway. For the centers of the flower, I'm once again using a comfort block, and this time using some red velvet ink. So that's going to add just a little bit of contrast to the colors. These matched really well. And just using that acrylic block, looking through and lining up those lines on the flower. You can shift it or rotate it however you feel. And if it goes outside of the flower, it's not a big deal. There was one of them I did oops on, but that is why I like to stamp multiples so that I do have plenty of other ones left to use. Now I'm also taking this leaf and stamping that in fresh asparagus ink. And I'll stamp a bunch of these out as well, just to have extra. Then using the coordinating dies, I'll line up my edges, hold it in place with the purple tape, and run those through my die cut machine. I definitely like die cutting these first before I do any stenciling. For one, I don't have to wait for it to dry before die cutting if I'm adding the glitz glitter gel. And it's just a lot easier for me personally to line up that stencil. So using the negative piece, I'm going to put my flowers back in from the back side, holding that in place just with one piece of purple tape. You don't want to load up on the tape on the back. You want to be able to remove these flowers easily once you're done. So here's the stencil, and we're going to be adding the center of the flowers using the gold glitz glitter gel. And you don't need a lot to do this. I'm just taking a little scoop and spreading that out, scraping off any excess back into the jar, and then I can carefully remove that stencil and pop this out. So this is why you don't want to overdo the tape in the back. You want to be able to remove that easily. And there's a close-up of that beautiful glitz glitter gel for the center of our flowers. So I will repeat that process for all of these. I'm not cleaning my stencil in between just because this is really quick. I didn't even speed this portion up. It is so quick to add this little bit of gel to those centers. So I just remove it, pop out the flower, and move on to my next image. And then once I'm done, then I'll clean my stencil off with a baby wipe. When I have finished the flowers, I'll set them off on the side to dry. It doesn't take real long with it being such a small area. And I'm going to repeat the same process for the leaves. So just placing those back into that negative piece of cardstock, holding it in place with the purple tape and then taking that coordinating stencil to add on the berries. Now, these are really fun because you can use a couple different colors for this. You could do red glitz glitter gel, or for mine, I'm using the white. I thought that was just a really nice subtle look. I had a lot of red going on with the flowers, so I thought the white would be just a great addition to this. So once again, just taking a little bit of that glitz glitter gel, adding it to the flowers, carefully remove the stencil. And now these are a little tricky, so you will have to be pretty careful because they are a smaller area to grab onto. And popping those out, you can see just carefully tugging at it. And like I said, that purple tape isn't a super strong hold, so I can pull those right off and have that great dimension on there and the glitter. I'm going to create the background with some jelly bean green cardstock and the Foliage stencil from Gina Designs. I just thought that was a really perfect design to go with my flowers. So I did previously spray my stencil with the Pixie spray from Thermoweb, so it's sticky on that side. I don't have to hold it down. And I'm ink blending on some jelly bean green ink with a life-changing blender brush. Once I'm happy with the blend, I'll just remove that stencil. And I did trim this piece of cardstock down, and I'm going to ink blend the edges just very lightly. This panel measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and I'll just continue to go around all of those edges. Once I'm happy with that, I could start layering up my cardstock. So I do have a card base created from the jelly bean green cardstock. I have a white panel that's measured 4 by 5 1/4, and I layered my ink blended panel on top of that. Now, typically I will take whatever I'm adding to the front of the card and I kind of lay it out first to get an idea of what's in front, what's in back, if I want to add any foam squares for dimension. And then I start working back to front. So I took the leaves and added Connect glue and just started gluing my layers together. I did add foam squares to one of my flowers just to give that the dimension. So right there, that corner one, I added the foam squares to. And previously off screen, I had stamped this sentiment, which is off of the Wishing You Joy. I heat embossed that in gold embossing powder onto black onyx cardstock. And I just did some fussy cutting to cut around that sentiment. Once that was done, I just trimmed off any excess that was overhanging on the edges, and that'll finish up my card. I hope you enjoyed today's video and taking a look at these stamp and stencil collection from Gina Designs and Thermoweb. And like I had said earlier, this is part of an Instagram hop that we're having right now. So I will link my Instagram account down below if you'd like to participate. There's giveaways and tons of inspiration in there. I also have a previous video using these same stamp sets and stencils that I will link to as well if you'd like to check out more of those. And as always, I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. If you did enjoy today's video and would like to see more from me, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also the little notification bell so you're notified when new videos are posted. Thanks so much again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.